the Archdiocese for the Military Services, USA. The Catholic faith has been at the service of the United States military from the nation's birth, and continues to do so today under the leadership of Archbishop Timothy P. Broglio.
It is a unique archdiocese because it's a personal archdiocese. My diocese doesn't depend on territory, it depends on who you are.
This is the story of the bishops of America, the shepherds of the past and the shepherds of today, who through their callings and ministry carry the church into the future. It's also the story of their parish, their church, the cathedral. This is The Chair, an exploration of what it means to be an apostle in America. In our nation's capital, in the shadow of the great basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, is the headquarters of the Archdiocese for the Military Services, USA, one of the most unique archdioceses in the country.
My diocese doesn't depend on territory, it depends on who you are. It serves the active duty component of all 5 branches of the military, now 6 branches of the military, their families, the patients in the 153 veterans hospitals, any student, any Catholic student at one of the 5 military academies, any American Catholic who works for the federal government outside of the United States, strictly speaking, is a member of the Archdiocese for Military Services.
That's a little bit different than a local diocese, which would have a geographical boundary. So in the Diocese of Brooklyn would have a very specific territorial area, and that is really where the pastoral responsibility for that bishop would be. So we're unique in that sense, and Archbishop Broglio likes to say that the sun doesn't set on this archdiocese because somewhere around the world somebody is moving and praying and is active in their service in the military.
Military chaplains have always been a part of this country. The history of chaplaincy in the United States is almost as old as the United States. One of the first acts that George Washington did was he requested the Continental Congress provide provisions for chaplains for the troops. The majority of them were Protestant, but there was one Catholic chaplain, a French-Canadian priest, who would accompany the troops whenever he was able to during the Revolutionary War. He wasn't an official member of the Corps, but it's important to know that there was a Catholic there as well.
While only a few priests assisted the military in the nation's early years, in the 1840s, President James K. Polk formally introduced Catholic presence to the military. He did so during the Mexican-American War with 2 Jesuit priests, Father Anthony Ray and Father John McElroy. While Father Ray perished during the conflict, Father McElroy actually survived the war, and he went on to found Boston College. The need for Catholic chaplains continued to grow in the coming decades, and many priests served both the Union and the Confederate armies in the Civil War. By the time the World Wars occurred in the 20th century, over 2,000 men served as Catholic chaplains for the military faithful. Bishop Patrick Hayes, an auxiliary bishop of the Archdiocese of New York, was chosen to head the military ordinance upon its creation in November of 1917.
First World War, when America entered it in 1917, and the United States Catholic community, the bishops in the United States realized this was a challenge that the church had never faced before, a world war, and how would the Catholic community respond to it? So one of the many ways they responded to it was by setting up an administrative structure to minister to the Catholics serving in the armed forces. Has kind of a tongue twister of a title, the Military Ordinariate. And Archbishop Hayes, originally Bishop Hayes, when he was an assistant bishop in New York, he began that work.
Many troops were going through the ports of New York, and they were receiving sacraments there before they were going to war. The Archdiocese of New York became the place where priests were assigned into the military.
In 1939, the Holy See further formalized the Catholic service to the faithful in the armed forces when they established the Military Vicariate of the United States of America. Now, this vicariate continued to be a duty for the Archbishop of New York for almost 50 years.
Members of the U.S. military are some of the nation's most heroic men and women. Likewise, Catholic chaplains to the military services are some of the Church's bravest priests. Two chaplains stand out in particular, whose causes for canonizations are open in Rome: Father Kapaun and Father Vincent Capodanno.
Emil Kapaun was born on April 20th, 1916, in a small Czech farming community in Pilsen, Kansas. 4 years after his ordination in 1940, Father Kapaun entered the chaplain corps and was sent to Burma, India, to serve the military faithful during World War II. For a few years following the war, Father Kapaun returned to parish life, but he quickly rejoined the chaplain corps in 1948. And it's during the Korean War that Father Kapaun attained his reputation for bravery. The priest ministered to soldiers in the thick of battle, often needing to be reminded to keep his head down from potentially deadly incoming bullets. As the 8th Cavalry pushed north, the Chinese army secretly entered the war and ambushed them. This resulted in the priest and his soldiers being captured and forced to march 60 miles to a prison camp. During the march and during the imprisonment, Father Kapaun continued to minister to his men. These circumstances and this heroic service resulted in Father Kapaun's death on May 23, 1951, after 7 months of tireless service to any and all prisoners in the camp. Father Kapaun was declared a servant of God by Pope John Paul II in 1993, and his cause for canonization continues to move forward.
A prisoner of war, a leader in maintaining spirit, keeping the prisoners sane, helping them to avoid the communist propaganda that was being foisted upon them. He even had them all saying the rosary, which I suppose in today's military you wouldn't get away with, but he did, and everybody respected him.
Father Vincent Capodanno was born on February 13, 1929 in Staten Island. He was the 10th child of Italian immigrants. World War II impacted Vincent personally, as 3 of his brothers served in the military, and it fostered in him a strong patriotism in addition to his strong Catholic faith. After 9 years of intense formation with Maryknoll, Father Capodanno was ordained a priest and sent to Taiwan. Father Capodanno joined the 7th Marines during Holy Week of 1966 and was sent to Vietnam. He lived, ate, slept in the same conditions as the Marines, and eventually this gave him the nickname the Grunt Padre because he was one of the grunts, he was one of the men. He heard their confessions, he instructed converts, he distributed medals in honor of St. Christopher. He also established libraries and organized outreach programs for local villagers.
He went with them into battles. He was there with them when they needed him most, and that was different. These men had not seen that from the other chaplains that had been supporting them. The other chaplains would stay back, away from the heaviest firefighting. Father Vincent, on the other hand, would go to the intelligence officer and say, what unit is likely to be in the most conflict? Where is the hottest spot going to be? And he would figure out a way to be there. Why is that? He loved souls so much that he went there to be with them, to comfort them, and to provide them the sacraments that they required at the last moments of their lives.
On September 4th, 1967, during Operation Swift, after hours of intense combat with the North Vietnamese army, Father Capodanno ran to the aid of a wounded soldier. Himself wounded, Father Capodanno provided medical and spiritual assistance. And despite being unarmed, he was shot 27 times from a machine gun. Posthumously, Father Capodanno was awarded the Medal of Honor.
And he died ministering to the Marines in Vietnam as they were under heavy attack. The cause of Father Capodanno is the responsibility of the Archdiocese for the military services. So we're pursuing that cause. The documentation is all over in Rome at the Congregation for the Causes of Saints. There is also a miracle that has been investigated in the Diocese of Palm Beach in Florida. That material is also over there. So we're waiting for the members of the congregation to pronounce on his heroic virtues.
What is the Father Capodanno Guild? So the Guild is a group of supporters that is supporting the cause for Father Capodanno for canonization. In 2013, Archbishop Broglio established the Guild to pursue the cause. One responsibility is to spread the word about this servant of God, Father Vincent Capodanno. Make sure everybody knows about it. But in addition to that, Archbishop Broglio has charged us with raising the funds necessary to pursue the cause.
In the years since Father Kapaun and Father Capodanno, the military vicariate was transformed by Pope John Paul II into the Archdiocese for the Military Services USA.
When the Archdiocese for Military Services was established in 1986, Archbishop Joseph Ryan was named the first Archbishop of it. He himself had been a chaplain in the military many years earlier.
Now, Ryan was a Navy veteran, and he had served the Navy Chaplain Corps during World War II. He took part in the Marine landing at Okinawa, being twice cited for bravery. He also served as Chancellor of the U.S. Military Vicariate from 1957 to 1958. Archbishop Ryan established the administrative headquarters of the new Archdiocese in Washington, D.C.
And then eventually he was succeeded by a native New York priest, Archbishop Edwin O'Brien, who's now ultimately became a cardinal. Archbishop O'Brien had served as a young priest. His first assignment, I believe, had been at the chapel on the grounds of West Point. So his career in the military began upon his ordination in 1965, working with the cadets at West Point.
He later is commissioned as a military chaplain in 1970, and he's given the rank of captain as well, and he served with the 82nd Airborne Division. From 1971 to 1972, he served in Vietnam with the 173rd Airborne Brigade and the 1st Cavalry Brigade. One of the things that he did while serving in Vietnam is he and a Protestant minister would have a base in the jungle, but they would then fly out by helicopter to try and say masses, hear confessions, serve the spiritual needs of the soldiers who were on the ground during the war.
The Archdiocese for Military Services is a unique archdiocese led by unique men, shepherds who care for a flock scattered across the seas, united in their love of Christ and service to our country.
Catholic chaplains in the military have a really unique role in the sense that they live with those who are in the military. They can walk all the spaces where people in the military work. So what I think is unique about them is not only that they have access to connect, but that they bring the sacraments of our church to those who are serving far from home. Right now, there are about 196 Catholic chaplains serving in all branches of the military services.
We have 43 men studying in 18 different seminaries. The military is actually the largest source of vocations in the United States today. So the CARA study for those ordained in 2020, 5% wore the uniform at some point in their life, and 13% came from families where either mom or dad were active duty service members. I can say honestly that 18% of those ordained this past year in the United States came from the Archdiocese for Military Services. I don't think any other bishop in the United States can say that.
We do not ordain priests for the Archdiocese for the Military Services. They're all on loan, either from a diocese or from a religious order. Again, our bishops will travel to those ordinations to support them and encourage them in their ministry, not just to the military, but to those who are in their diocese or their religious order. The Archdiocese for the Military Services does not have a cathedral, again, because it's a non-territorial archdiocese. There's no one place that everybody could gather, and there's no possibility for us to gather everybody. It would be too difficult to do. We have a chapel here at the Edwin Cardinal O'Brien Pastoral Center, where daily Mass is celebrated. Archbishop Broglio has a chair. Every archbishop has a chair, the seat from which they provide the wisdom of the church. They are the shepherd of that particular church. And from that chair, they lead. So we need a shepherd to lead us. And Archbishop Broglio does that, not just from his chair in Washington, D.C., but from wherever he is.
I grew up in Cleveland Heights, Ohio, so I lived about a block and a half from my parish church and the elementary school that I attended for 9 years. I'm the youngest in my family. My father was a physician. My mother was a nurse. But I went to Boston College already with the idea that the Lord was calling me to the diocesan priesthood. I didn't want to lose any time. By the same token, I didn't want to enter the seminary right away, even though there was a college seminary in Cleveland. Well, when I went to Rome, first of all, the experience of moving from Boston College in the years of protest to entering a seminary with a large group of men who had the same goal that I did, which was to be ordained a priest, that was a very refreshing experience. And then also studying with seminarians from all over the United States was broadening because there were some very, very talented people. Many of the professors that we had were the periti who wrote the documents of the Second Vatican Council. So you really had superior professors. I was very pleased with the education that I received there.
Archbishop Broglio was ordained to the priesthood in May of 1977 in the Chapel of the Immaculate Conception at the North American College in Rome. From 1977 to 1979, Father Broglio served as associate pastor, St. Margaret Mary Parish, South Euclid, and lectured in theology at Notre Dame College. In 1979, he was sent to the Pontifical Ecclesiastical Academy to train as a diplomat.
Actually, I was going back to Rome to finish my license in biblical theology. And then before classes started, Monsignor Regali came in, basically sat down in this ornate reception room in the Secretariat of State and asked me if I would accept an appointment to the Pontifical Ecclesiastical Academy. I didn't know what to say. He basically gave me 24 hours because he was leaving with Pope John Paul II to go to Ireland and the United States. And he said when he came back, it would be too late to move to the academia and to start the school. And so I thought, well, the church has asked me to do something, I should really give it a try. And I knew that if I decided in the course of my studies that this was not for me, that I could always go back to the diocese.
In the course of his ministry, Archbishop Broglio served as secretary of the Apostolic Nunciature in Abidjan, Ivory Coast, and of the Apostolic Nunciature in Asunción, Paraguay. He later served as Chief of Cabinet to Angelo Cardinal Sodano, Secretary of State to St. Pope John Paul II.
So I think one of the lessons I learned is the importance of delegation. The other thing I learned is Cardinal Sodano never signed anything he didn't read, and he was meticulous. He would meet with Holy Father twice a week, and he would meticulously prepare for that audience. And he would always tell the Holy Father the truth, even if he knew that he was going to say something that would not be particularly appreciated. Then, when the Pope made the decision, he would carry out that decision. But he always wanted to be sure that he had all of the facts. That is really service. And that's really how you have to deal with someone who has responsibility. You have to be sure that at least they know what you know.
In February 2001, the Archbishop was named Apostolic Nuncio to the Dominican Republic and Apostolic Delegate to Puerto Rico. The Archbishop was ordained as an Archbishop by His Holiness St. John Paul II on March 19, 2001.
Well, I think one of the first things you realize is all of a sudden you're in charge. So before, when you were writing reports and so forth, someone else was going to sign them, so someone else would check them and ask you questions about them. Now all of a sudden, you're the one signing the report, you're the one taking the position. So I think that's a bit of a revelation. When Cardinal Sodano first told me that this was going to be my assignment, I was a bit overwhelmed because that's normally a nunciature that goes to someone who's already been a nuncio somewhere else. Starting at that level was a bit disconcerting. It's a very important place also in the church because it's where Columbus first arrived. It's where the first diocese was set up.
Archbishop Broglio was named Archbishop for the military services on November 19, 2007 by Pope Benedict XVI, and installed on the 25th of January 2008.
When I came to the Archdiocese, they're not asking me to conduct a war. They're asking me to minister to people. And so I think the pastoral preparation that I had and the work that I've done was a good preparation for that. I would even say that the diplomatic background helped me a great deal just from having lived in different places and realizing how I was going to minister to people who also live in different places. There's a certain common bond there. By the same token, I hadn't lived in the United States for some 30 years when I came back to take up residence here in Washington. So that was something new too. I had to reacquaint myself with the country and the experiences. The pastoral contact with the people of God and the ability to bring them the sacraments, I think for me that's the most important thing and probably the thing that I enjoy most. That's the most important thing that we do, is we help people find the kingdom of God. We show people the way to the kingdom of God. So the end point is arriving and taking care of people. That is challenging. It's for others to judge whether I've managed the balance well or not, but it certainly is one of the unique aspects of this Archdiocese.